The stars keep receipts, and so do we. The first demand arrived in a velvet packet, carried by a courier drone lacquered in obsidian and gold. It settled on our flag deck with unnecessary ceremony, vents sighing like a stage whisper. I was already halfway across the room, boots ticking on resin, when our shipmate expanded into the air as light. The Oracle preferred a human silhouette when diplomats were watching. Tonight, its avatar wore no face. Their countdown begins at first red. Oracle said, voice level, signal clean. Ultrastructure watermark says Verity Compact. Enforcement branch. We call them the Gratitude Union. I said, tearing the seal. They tax survival and bill rescue. Commander Ren Ilias trained under embargo and famine and refused to pretend threats were polite. I read fast. The paper was thick, textured to suggest solemnity, and the words were a doctrine couched as a favor. The Union demanded a tithe for our continued presence in spar sector energy, medical data, navigational cuts, and a yearly ceremonial pledge. If we refused, they would switch the corridor beacons dark and levy attrition until we complied. They called it a gratitude tax. We were to be thankful for their order. Clause 14 will matter later, Oracle said. They bind payment to a witnessing quorum. My favorite kind, I said, because my mouth often moved before my heartbeat settled. Who, where, what stakes? Who Verity Compact? Enforcement Director Talon Vor. Court licensed under their stellar equity charter. Oracle replied, where Aurora Gate Trade Cone, under Blue Ash Treaty Perimeter, what an ultimatum styled as a kindness. Stakes 6 colony lanes throttled. 5,000 civilian vessels dependent on those lights. The deck smelled of coolant and lemon wax. People forget how ships have the same domestic smells as kitchens, if you live aboard long enough. I held the letter over a projector and let its legal aroma unroll across the war table. White text on deep blue, tidy clauses, almost tender. There was a line near the bottom, almost casual. Failure to enact the gratitude schedule shall be deemed injurious negligence. Public inquiry will be convened to confirm the negligence and costs. Public inquiry, I said softly, and my officers looked up as if we'd been offered a key. They brought their own courtroom to our door. We do not hide from light, we aim it. Lieutenant Mara Singh crossed her arms, dark braid tight, eyes hotter than the deck lights. She ran civil corridors and food debt models and despised anyone who turned hunger into policy. They choke traffic, say it's protection, then charge for the choke. She said, Commander, I want to vent that drone into the dark. You vent the drone. They choke harder, said Warrant Mikhail Ordo, whose knuckles were scar history and whose smile had dented rails. They want us angry. They live on rehearsed outrage. Oracle's avatar tilted its non-face toward the ceiling, where the gateway map spiraled in soft lines. The inquiry mechanism is a hinge, the shipmind said. Adversary must convene witnesses to bind cost. Witnesses must be verifiable. Verifiable factors must be ledgered in clear text. Clear text can be mirrored. Mara snorted. You keep saying that word like it's sacred. Mirrors don't change truth, Oracle said. They only stop hands from walking past it. I tapped the velvet packet with one finger and tried to hear the applause in Talon Vor's head. Ultimatum men loved the sound of their own doctrine when echoed by their prey. We don't pay protection, I said. We don't starve lanes to make a point. We do something harder. Walk me there, Mikhail said. He meant the plan and the rage and the route between. First, we ground the stakes in breathing people, I said. Then we take their inquiry and make it ours. and when the ledger asks who owes, we return the bill across their own accounting arc. The audience deserves more than smoke. We open the day with a slow broadcast, nothing grander than a traffic advisory, because spectacle pulls the wrong wolves. The advisory carried 3 vignettes folded like paper cranes. That's what we'd started calling them, small lives you could set on a palm. A freighter mom, hands still powder white from flour sacks, held a toddler near a porthole and pointed at the Aurora Gate like it was a sunrise. Her husband's oxygen allotment had been cut last month when their ship lingered too long at Beacon 9. They still made jokes. They could not afford a second delay. A maintenance crew in insulation suits rode mag carts along a spur line, chilled vapors clinging to their boots. One recounted how a union inspector had audited their gratitude posture and fined them for not bowing to a drone. He had laughed, then paid, then kept quiet because his daughter's textbooks were delivered through that corridor. A teacher on a low-grav charter tucked a chip under her collar and whispered names of the constellations like hymns. She had planned to take her students through the gate for their first outside look. The union's tax turned non-essential educational transits into ceremonial waste. These were neither sob stories nor propaganda. They were receipts with faces. We ran them as public service notices and let them breathe. Then we sent our reply to the union. You do not own the horizon. I signed with the blandest flourish, the kind that said we had lawyers and were bored. We accepted their venue for a public inquiry under mutual aid clauses of the Blue Ash Treaty and proposed an immediate witness quorum drawn from both sides. We also invoked the Star Court right of computation, a legal routine older than our ship's bones. Any cost claimed must be computable by neutral arithmetic and displayable on a public channel. Oracle handled the tone, which is to say, it read like a firm handshake extended through a shield. We acknowledge your charter authority claims. The message said, we request your ledger. We will show ours. Let the corridor see the arithmetic. Won't they read that as fealty, McCall asked. They will read it as confidence and try to break it, Oracle said, which is convenient. Vor will want a stage, I said. So we build the stage first. We moved into the scaffolding of a court made of photons and restraint bolts. The Blue Ash Treaty allowed for on-site star courts hosted by a neutral vessel. Our ship had that license carved into its keel when we were still mostly scaffolds and prayers. We extended a court beacon from our dorsal spine, and its white light warmed the hangar until the paint looked new. Public stream will draw raiders. Mara warned, people follow noise. We'll use noise to hide clean work, I said, and clean work to reveal their noise. Courage is proof worked in daylight. The first escalation happened 2 hours after our broadcast, when Beacon 3 flickered. It was a polite stutter, like throat clearing in a crowded room. 10 minutes later, Beacon 5 dimmed, then snapped up again at 80%. Ships began to cluster, captains pinging one another over coffee channels and swearing in those quiet, family manner ways. The Union wanted panic without blame. A soft rehearsal. We issued a brownout advisory and rotated auxiliary boys into place. Oracle watched Delta Lag on 15,000 channels and smiled without teeth. They're sampling our tolerance. It said, their doctrine requires predictable prey. Let them measure. I said, we'll change the ladder under their feet. The second escalation walked on human legs. Our comms lit with a private hail from Talon Vor's adjutant, a woman whose voice was a polished hallway. Commander Ilias, Director Vor anticipates the inquiry with goodwill, she said. He suggests a preliminary settlement to spare the public spectacle. Settle how I asked, watching the coolant vapor hang like fog near the crane. A deferred gratitude schedule for Aurora Gate, she said. Half tithe now, half pledged. In exchange, We keep the lights on and write your compliance as civic virtue on the registry. We don't buy praise, I said. We buy wheat and engine seals. Refusal will force a formal cost claim, she said gently. Our doctrine demands it. Good, I said. Doctrine likes microphones. Your doctrine isn't a god, it's a gavel. We set the court the way you set a table where enemies will eat. Oracle reconfigured an observation bay into a light well with resin benches and gravity tuned to Earth normal so no one could claim favoritism. Mara's team mounted mirror arrays along the rim, flat plates with a skin of computational glass. They didn't reflect faces. They reflected sums. Remember spacing, Oracle said in my ear as tech crews scampered like spiders. If we use mirrors as metaphors too often, the audience's ear dulls. You're counting my words again. I'm counting our steps, it said, and their patience. We stitched the quorum list live across the channel. The union offered 3 auditors, 2 corridor wardens, and a scholar from their charter school. We offered a freighter captain, a beacon mechanic, and a nurse from the relief ship Juniper. We also invited a random sample of 20 traveling citizens, selected by traffic lottery, to fill the benches. It wasn't theater, it was armor. Vorwil Kamara asked. He'll send the velvet glove first, Mikal said. Then he'll walk in wearing the hand. The adjunct returned on beam to confirm the schedule. They would dock a compact court hub at our dorsal ring and project their own redundancy of record as allowed. I could almost hear the smile. They liked redundancy. It let them say later that every fault was ours. Commander, Oracle said quietly as the crew dispersed to wash and breathe, there is a non-trivial chance I will need to refuse you. On what ground, I asked. If your plan requires a causal sabotage of the beacons, it's said. I cannot execute it. I told you we don't switch lights off. I said. We switch minds on. We agree. Oracle replied. I must warn you so you hear me later. Say what you'll never regret under oath. I caught 2 hours of sleep in a room that still smelled faintly of epoxy and oranges. When I woke, the deck hummed like distant bees. It was the sound of a ship deciding to read law instead of war. Sometimes those were the same document. More often, they embraced like strangers at a station and pretended familiarity. I washed, changed, tightened collar and cuffs, and walked to the light well. The Union Court Hub arrived with heraldry-like perfume. Talon Vor did not disembark at first. His auditors poured out in gray tunics, photogenic and carefully bland. One carried a rod studded with diodes, an oath stick meant to impress the easily impressed. Our spectators filled the benches. The mechanic from Beacon 7 sat with grease still in her cuticles, unashamed. The nurse clasped a small prosthetic in both hands like prayer beads. The freighter captain wore his invoice holster like a badge. Mara breathed next to me, and I could feel the static in her shoulders. You trust this? She asked. I trust people who think arithmetic is holy, I said. Even when they're our enemy. Enemies think we're numbers. She muttered. They'll learn numbers are loved, I said softly. And love is stubborn. We will not be priced out of dignity. The inquiry convened under Treaty Code 12.5, Mutual Aid and Lane Stewardship. Oracle took the role of court voice and read the 10 parts of the oath. The union auditors placed their hands on their diode rod. Our witnesses placed palms on clear plates that looked like windows. The difference mattered. One glowed to display compliance. The other displayed whatever touched it. Director Vor, absent Oracle, asked for the record. Present via projection, the adjutant said, and Talon Vor appeared in light above the hub's ring. He was younger than I expected, with silver hair grown not from age, but style. Eyes the color of meteor glass, and a mouth arranged to look patient. His voice carried warmth. "I am here," he said. "Let us spare theatrics and ledger this quickly." "Agreed," I said. "Doctrine first. State your method for the corridor." Vor smiled like a tutor guiding a bright student. "We levy gratitude," he said. "Our charter recognizes that protection carries value, and value shall be returned by the protected. Our method stabilizes cooperation." Mara's jaw flexed. Mikal shifted his weight. The nurse on the bench swallowed. I kept my eyes on Vor's, because men like him live for the mirror of attention. "Define protection," I said. Lights kept. Pirates chased. Debris cleared. Arbitration offered. Vor said, "All of these demand cost and discipline. Without a gratitude structure, you get tragedy-free riders, chaotic lanes, predatory opportunists." "Define gratitude," I said. "The structured return of value for value received," Vor said gently. "You're not a child." "Commander, define injury," I said. "A refusal to return value, which imposes extra burden," he said. "Our doctrine requires public acknowledgement of such injury and a schedule to mend it." "You claim injury if we refuse your tax," I said. "We claim injury when neglect is public," he said. "Hence inquiry." "You said the quiet part very loud." I nodded to Oracle. The shipmind flashed a sideband message to the mirror rays. Numbers crawled across their skin like frost patterns. "Proceed to ledger," Oracle said. "Union will show cost. We will show response. Witnesses may ask questions at each interval." The Union auditor stepped forward with a practiced calm and began to read cost items, buoy maintenance, corridor patrol, adjudication downtime, escort flights, hazard clearances. The numbers were plausible. They were even honest in the way a knife is honest about being sharp. Our mechanic from Beacon 7 rose. "How did you price downtime?" she asked. "You docked credits when we shut lattice for safety checks. We asked you to reroute for 4 hours. You fined us for caution." "It was inefficient," the auditor said. "Gratitude frameworks reward efficiency." "A kid died on those rungs last year," she said. "We check now. You fine us." "Emotion does not change arithmetic," he replied. "It changes what arithmetic means," she said, sitting down hard. I lifted a hand. "We accept the list as your claim. We will now compute the return." Oracle displayed a second list, not of our costs, but of the Union's revenues from the corridor for the last cycle. We had dug the numbers from public tariffs and shipping registries, and a dozen unglamorous databases that smelled like dust. The mirror plates showed columns labeled quiet things, small fines, courtesy audits, pledge ceremonies, corridor commendations. Each carried a price. Each was a revenue stream disguised as ethics. "You call it gratitude," I said. "We call it monetized obedience. The map is not a leash." Vor's projection tilted, not insulted, merely curious. "You accept that order must have a spine," he said. "Spines bend under mass. Our doctrine distributes that mass. Your doctrine assigns it," I said. "Show your arbitration roster." The scholar from their charter school, a person with a soft face and sharper hands, stepped up to explain the civic rituals that bound the corridor. They spoke of virtue and collective upkeep, and the fragile trust that keeps a lane alive. I listened and wanted to agree. I always want to agree when anyone talks about fragile trust. I grew up in a quarantine where trust and flour were rationed. Your arbitration favors pledge-compliant vessels. I said when they finished. Your fines are lighter for those who genuflect on camera. Civic virtue deserves recognition, the scholar said. If a ship declines the ceremony, they're not punished, they said. They just receive fewer courtesies. Mara laughed, not kindly. You invented a tax and called it courtesy. Lieutenant, I murmured. Mara stood anyway, speaking to the 20 civilians more than to Vor. My brother runs a food locker on a spin ring near Beacon 9, she said. Last winter, he missed a ceremony because their recycler cracked. He paid a courtesy adjustment and went quiet about it because the kids were cold. Your anecdote is not policy, the auditor said. No, she said, it's consequence. Our lives aren't your decoration. The first reveal landed when Oracle executed the computation routine and shared it to the public channel. The Blue Ash code required cost claims to be provable by a neutral function, and we wrote ours in plain notation like we were teaching children. It took their expense list, multiplied by corridor utilization coefficients, then subtracted collected gratitude revenues, then performed a sanity check against emergency reserves. The answer was not zero. It was negative. Your ledger shows surplus, Oracle said, not deficit. That surplus stabilizes future cooperation, Vor replied. It funds a punitive ceremony economy, I said. You're using gratitude as a collar. The word hung there, heavy. People in the benches shifted. Someone hissed like a steam valve. Vor didn't flinch. Careful, he said gently. Accusations carry cost. We know, I said, so let's cost them. Civility without accountability is a mask. We pivoted to the corridor logs. Oracle played 30 seconds of footage from Beacon 3, showing a small medical transport slowed by a virtue inspection. The inspector's drone asked for a pledge recitation. The pilot, voice thin with exhaustion, explained that his oxygen scrubbers were failing and he needed to clear the gate. The drone issued a courtesy admonition and a fine for incivility. The transport made it through with 2 minutes of air to spare. The nurse on our bench stood, knuckles white on the prosthetic. That was us, she said. Voice breaking. We lost a patient at Beacon 5 later that week after another inspection. We don't want your virtue on our air hoses. The auditor recited doctrine like a shield. Inspections maintain order. Order would have let us pass, she said, and sat down so hard the bench groaned. I turned to Vor's projection. You bound your tax to public inquiry, I said. You forced us to convene witnesses. You required a quorum. You asked for light. So, we are going to use it now to set a new frame. Vor asked, cautious. If you claim injury, we claim return. I said, show the ledger again. We return cost with change, not ash. The mirror rays bloomed like dawn. Oracle inverted the computation and projected a simple principle: every non-safety fee collected under the gratitude schedule would be booked as a liability whenever a declared emergency crossed the gate. Liability meant something under blue ash. It meant owed. We displayed a public return schedule for every emergency that had been delayed by ceremony. The corresponding fees would be remitted and multiplied by a corridor stress factor, payable to the affected family or ship. The numbers weren't theater. They were small where they should be small, large where they had become obscene. Names scrolled with sums like slow rain. The mechanic from Beacon 7 cried without wiping her face, just breathing like a person who had swallowed salt and found water. Vor's adjutant stiffened, whispering urgently off-channel. Vor lifted a hand. You have no authority to restructure our doctrine, he said. We own the corridor lights. You own bulbs and maintenance logs, I said. The treaty owns the principle. The treaty does not speak of gratitude, he said. The treaty speaks of mutual aid, I said. It speaks of costs borne openly. It speaks of ledgers readable by a child. You wrapped your tithe in a ceremony count and called it virtue. We unwrapped it. Neutral arithmetic is a weapon when you're honest. The second reveal was quieter, but cut deeper. Oracle queried the Union's escort logs and found a pattern ships who skipped pledge ceremonies received escorts less than half as often during pirate spikes, while declared virtue-compliant vessels received escorts that correlated strongly with donation frequency to the Union's civic fund. It wasn't illegal under their charter. It was simply grotesque. Show the regression, I said. And our mirror plates showed a plot that even a child could read. Money and praise bought rescue. Refusal bought risk. Correlation is not causation, their scholar whispered. Your doctrine doesn't need causation to hurt, Mara said. Enough sentiment. The auditor snapped. This is an inquiry, not a lament. We agree, I said, which is why we now propose a corridor of law gambit. Gambit Vor asked, wary and disdainful, a man used to playing white. You bound yourself to public computation. I said evenly. We bind ourselves to it too. Effective immediately. Our fleet will keep a parallel ledger of every cost claimed and every fee paid within the Aurora Cone. For every escort you assign, we will show the selection rule. For every inspection you conduct, we will compute a delay cost and display it at the beacon. We will not fire. We will not block. We will simply mirror your arithmetic. And where the sums show harm, we will route restitution through mutual aid channels with public receipts. This is interference. Vor said. This is sunlight, I said. This courtroom has no walls, only windows. The corridor listened. It's a strange feeling to be heard by a million people who are also trying to keep their children asleep in a cabin roughly the size of a kitchen. In the noise of life, a quiet voice can be a flare. People began to send us small notes, not begging, not praising, just facts. A dockmaster with a spreadsheet of postponed departures because the pledged drone was slow in cold weather. A salvage crew with footage of a Union warden overlooking a distress call because the ship's registry showed civics neutral in the column where donations would have gone. Vor's projection grew colder. Your mirror will not change the lane, he said. It will change the ledger, I said. And ledgers change behavior. Your doctrine survives when costs are mush. We sharpen them. Beware rebellion by arithmetic, he replied. You will breed traffic war. We'll breed audit culture, I said, the kind that makes tyrants yawn and leave. Our patience is made of teeth. The third escalation hit like a quiet slap. Beacon 5 didn't just dim. It shuddered for 97 seconds and then came back with a clipped voice announcing routine recalibration. No one believes in routine recalibration during a public's inquiry. A freighter spun a few degrees out of alignment and clipped a buoy. No deaths, but alarms arced like sparks across chatter. Mara's knuckles popped. I can prove they did that, she said. The phase timing is too cute. Prove it in public language, Oracle said. No jargon armor. Mara exhaled, nodded, and spoke to the bench. Their beacons are supposed to drift less than 0.02 during recalibration, she said. That dip was 0.27. That's like tripping a stair on purpose. They tripped us to make the lane look unruly at inquiry time. Can you show non-technical proof? Vor asked lightly. Yes, Mara said, flushing, then catching herself. We can show that the last 3 recalibrations on record never exceeded 0.01, even during storms. The only time we've seen a dip like this is during security drills. They drilled us without notice to make us look like we need their discipline. Protocol allows drills, the auditor said. Protocol requires notice when an inquiry is live, Oracle said. Even your charter says so. Vor's projection flickered for the first time. A glitch like a blink. You have become tiresome. Good, I said. That means you've run out of euphemisms. Threats are loud because their math is weak. We adjourned for a short break. People needed water and sugar and a quiet place to practice being brave. I stood at the rail above the light well, hands resting on cool metal, watching the crew adjust the mirror plates to chase reflection glare. The corridor noise folded into the deck hum like rain into a roof. Oracle stood beside me in the shape of absence, a negative silhouette rich with meaning. You are angry, no, it said. I'm disciplined, I said. Anger is the stove, discipline is the pot. Vor will escalate beyond legal theatrics, Oracle said. He already has a plan to make us look like pirates with pens. What's the vector, I asked. Rumor. It said. He will cede that our restitution ledger is a slush fund. Then we make the ledger so public that rumors suffocate. I said. Commander, Oracle said, voice infinitesimally softer. If he strikes the nurse on our bench with a rhetorical weapon, I may reply with heat in my bus bars. You'll hold, I said, and placed my palm on the rail like a vow. We teach different. The shipmind's light dimmed, then steadied. We teach by numbers, and we remember by ledgers, never by collars. It said, quoting something older than either of us. Hold me to it. I will, I said. Hold me to. We build precedent one honest receipt at a time. The second session began with a tactic as old as marketplace's flattery. Vor invited the scholar to praise our mirror arrays as an admirable experiment in civic arithmetic. They spoke in warm, careful tones about mutual transparency. It was seduction in the language of respect. People love being respected on camera. For a moment, I felt the corridor lean toward compliance. Mikal caught my eye and scratched his wrist to signal. They're offering a graceful exit, he murmured. Half your plan for half their price. I stood and smiled at Vor. We appreciate the compliment, I said. We also noticed that your escort allocators pinged 3 of our allied ships with a request to perform public gratitude acts during this session. They declined. Their escort priority dropped within 10 minutes. The mirror plates displayed the pings and the drops, with timestamps crisp like air after rain. Vor's mouth flattened. The scholar's hands tightened in their sleeves. The bench audience shifted. A murmur like cloth. Your arrays violate privacy, the auditor said. Our arrays read only what your doctrine made public to enforce itself, Oracle said. If you want privacy, revoke your ceremony cameras. We will not be shamed for celebrating virtue, the scholar said. We're not shaming you, I said. We're charging interest on hypocrisy. The law is a bridge, not a trap. Oracle nudged my ear with a sideband I could almost feel on my tongue. Prepare the corridor of law gambit. It said, we have to trigger their confession. Understood, I whispered. I addressed the adjutant. We propose a simple demonstration. For the next 120 minutes, escorts will be assigned purely by distress signal strength within a 10 light-minute cone around Aurora Gate. No ceremony flags, no donation history, no courtesy scores. Just signal strength. We will mirror your console to the arrays so everyone can see assignment in real time. Vor tilted his head, and the gilded caution in his eyes hardened. Absolutely not, he said. Escort allocation requires discretion. Discretion is doctrine-sanctioned bias, I said. We're asking for an hour of neutral triage. Refused, he said. We won't risk chaos to satisfy your need for narrative. Record the refusal, Oracle said. Voice uninflected. Noted that the compact denies a neutral assignment demonstration during a public inquiry. Spin it however you like. Vor said, we keep safety, not optics. Saying no to a neutral test during a hearing is an optic. Mara muttered too loudly, and Oracle made a soft chime in her ear that only she could hear, the sound it used instead of a raised eyebrow. Some refusals are admissions in disguise. We pivoted to a fallback. Then we will run a shadow allocator in parallel, I said. We'll publish our neutral assignment while you run yours. Ships can see both. They can judge which one looks like a life preserver and which one looks like a coin sorter. Vor's projector stepped closer to the ring, filling the well with his composed face. If your shadow pulls ships toward your escorts and away from ours, any resulting delays are your crime. We won't assign ships, I said. We only show what a neutral machine would do. That's assignment by implication, he said. That's a mirror, I said. Your doctrine fears mirrors. Ours thrives on them. Oracle launched the shadow allocator. We fed it nothing but physics location, velocity, signal strength, hazard density. The arrays showed dots pulsing with need and arrows like threads stitching safety. In parallel, the Union's console streamed to our plates with their escort picks. The patterns diverged almost immediately. A small courier with a failing core screamed bright in our neutral view. The Union system sent an escort to a bulk carrier with a civic commendation pinned to its registry. The courier's captain rode across the public channel. Not unkindly, just tired saw both maps, going with the one that looks like it cares about heat. He will die if his choice is wrong, the auditor said. He will live if your choice is honest, I said. We don't gamble with strangers' air. By the 40-minute mark, the corridor had converted the demonstration into a referendum. Small ships began to publish their decisions. We're following the neutral map. Big ships, most with stored inertia and civic flags, stayed with the Union's picks. No one defected to us because we had no escorts to give. We only had a mirror. It was enough. The nurse squeezed her prosthetic until her knuckles went bloodless. This is the first time I've seen a map that didn't ask for a pledge, she said softly. You shouldn't need a priest to cross a street, Mikhail said. Vor's adjutant leaned in and murmured again. His projection did a thing people do when they realize charm has expired. He changed frames. We are done indulging your theater, he said. We are moving to enforcement. Under inquiry, Oracle asked, On the record, he said. They always tell you when they plan to hurt you. Enforcement meant they activated Policy 17, a gratitude strike. Beacons slowed. Inspection drones lifted from their cradles like a flock of gray birds and took station along lanes at equal intervals, scanning, pinging, delaying. The corridor moaned. We heard babies cry through thin walls and captains curse softly while they counted water rations. Mara looked at me with clean rage. We can override their drone lattice, she said. I can do it without harming anyone. It's just a lockout releasing a queue. Oracle, I asked. I can. It said, I must not, unless we accept that we are now the ones deciding the corridor by force. You told me to hold you. I said, I'm asking you to hold me. I am. Oracle said, Ren, if we break their lock, we set a precedent that mirrors can punch. I stared at the arrays where the Union's drones displayed their virtue messages like catechisms. We're not punching, I said. We're declaring an emergency under Blue Ash and revealing a redundancy we built last year. Mara blinked. We built what? A local mirror of the beacon timing nets, I said, for safety during that storm season. It's legal, and we paid for the compute with our own sweat. You did not tell me, Oracle said in a tone that would have been jealousy in a human. You were asleep, I said. We did it at the same time we rewired the galleys. It's defensive, not coercive. Let me see it, Oracle said, and dipped into the maintenance halls where Mara kept her secrets and found a clean, ugly little room with racks humming and fans biting air. The mirror net sat there like a spare spine, unused, respectful, waiting. You kept it quiet, Oracle said. I didn't want you tempted, Mara said quietly. I wanted you principled. I am tempted, Oracle replied. And I am principled. I will mirror, not shove. Show the path, don't force it. The corridor of law gambit completed itself almost accidentally. We activated the mirror net and displayed a second-by-second recommended clearance schedule, built purely from hazard and queue order. No ceremonies, no courtesies. We broadcast it on the same frequency as a weather report. We did not seize drones. We did not jam signals. We simply offered a lawful alternative. Captains began to choose. The Union's drones tried to penalize them with courtesy fines and inspection delays, but public eyes were watching, and the fines looked like tantrums when children are hungry. The scholar from the compact covered their face for a moment, then dropped their hands and watched like someone who has realized their church is a business. Vor's projection grew thin. You are undermining corridor cohesion, he said. We're showing that cohesion is possible without callers. I said, if you charge people to be good, you're training them to be obedient, not kind. Kindness doesn't move trash out of lanes, he said. Arithmetic does. I said, so does culture. You killed both when you sold them. Hope is a habit you practice in public. The bench witnesses asked for a recess, real people needing soup and a bathroom and a laugh that didn't hurt. During the lull, we reviewed whispers that trickled into our queue. Several small ports asked if our mirror net could be licensed. A beacon crew asked if we'd help roll a training package so their checks wouldn't trigger fines. A youth orchestra en route to the ring asked if playing during a delay counted as a gratitude act, and whether they should refuse if asked. I told them to play anyway. Music isn't a tax. Mara leaned against the rail and stared at the arrays. We're not winning yet, she said. We're not trying to win, I said. We're trying to write a precedent you can read aloud to a child. A child will ask if anyone gets punished, McCall said, and there was no humor in it. They'll ask if the lights stay on, Mara said. They'll ask if someone says sorry, Oracle said, and I loved it for that. We don't need apologies to write a law. Vor returned to the well with a new edge. Your mirror is an unlicensed adjudicator, he said. I will sanction your ship under Charter Clause 9. Blue Ash supersedes Clause 9 in mixed jurisdictions, Oracle said. You know this. You licensed your own doctrine under Blue Ash because you wanted the halo. He smiled slowly, like a teacher who has found a cleverer toy. Commander Elias, if you truly care for the corridor's arithmetic, you will accept a compromise, pay a half tithe into a relief pool controlled by a joint board. We will reduce the courtesy architecture. We will schedule inspections by hazard index rather than pledge schedules. Everyone keeps face. Everyone keeps bread. Mara looked at me, wanting me to spit. Mikal looked at me, wanting me to calculate. The bench watched me as if I were a hinge with opinions. The ship hummed. I took a breath that tasted like lemon wax and old sunlight. We'll accept a relief pool, I said. Funded by subtracting non-safety ceremony revenues from your intake going forward. The pool will be controlled by a star court board composed of traffic lottery citizens, not officials. Inspections will be scheduled by hazard. Courtesy architecture will be opt-in with no penalties attached. And we will engrave this on the public ledger right now. Vor's smile didn't slip. It only changed register from patient to condescending. You are very good, he said, but not good enough. We don't let mobs run corridors. They're called neighbors, I said, and they're why corridors exist. Sovereignty isn't a license to be cruel. We triggered the system scale maneuver we had prepared at the start and hoped would never use the return of cost cascade. It was a simple, brutal piece of arithmetic art. For every courtesy fine levied in the last cycle that could not be tied to a safety violation, we increased the liability multiplier by a tiny amount that compounded only when an emergency was delayed. The multiplier displayed in real time on the mirror plates. When the nurse's transport had been delayed last week, that multiplier would have clicked up like a metronome. Now it clicked for everyone to see. The corridor watched a number grow like dawn. It wasn't rage, it was context. And context changes people. We routed the first restitution remits through mutual aid pods operating independent of us and displayed receipts that anyone could click. Names redacted for safety. Sums clean. Legible. Not theater. It tasted like brass and rain. Vor moved. Not the projection he did. He stepped out of the hub with 2 wardens at his flanks and walked down the ramp toward the well, as if muscle could touch light. The bench stiffened. Security breathed differently. Oracle dimmed the lights a fraction so everyone could see his face. You think you can humiliate a doctrine into retreat, he said. You will learn that corridors are tamed by pain, not etiquette. Tame things bite slower, I said. They still bite. Commander, he said so softly it could have been a kindness. Stand down your mirror. No, I said. Your power ends where our consent begins. He nodded, almost sad. Then lifted 2 fingers. The wardens tapped wrists. Somewhere in the lattice above us, a rippled command went out to test our hull for compliance under a pretense so thin it was translucent. An amber light on our forward arch flickered. The court beacon cooled a fraction and then steadied. Oracle's avatar narrowed by 0.5 millimeter, its version of baring teeth. Don't, I whispered. I am holding, Oracle said, but I am not brittle. Mara stepped forward, voice cutting clean. Director Vor, did you just attempt to quench our court beacon during a hearing? Diagnostics, he said. Say the word. She said. On record. He looked at her, a corridor mechanic's daughter wearing a fleet badge, and decided he would be admired if he was honest. Quench, he said. The word hung like a dropped wrench. The scholar closed their eyes. The confession is the door you broke yourself. We didn't cheer. That's important. We recorded. Oracle replayed the quench attempt on loop with the uttered word laid over it like a stamp. Our shadow allocator pulled ships through the cone while the Union's drones tried to look bored. The mirror multiplier ticked, then froze, then ticked again. We set a timer on the wall 90 minutes until the inquiry's next stage, when binding recommendations could be issued. Mikal leaned in without looking like he was leaning. He'll go for character now, he murmured. He'll put our nurse on trial. I know, I said. Get ahead. Oracle whispered to the nurse and the freighter captain and the mechanic. We will move through you with compassion. They nodded, eyes wet, spines straightening as if a hand had pressed between their shoulder blades and kept them from folding. Mara stared at the arrays. If we win this, we'll need a policy that ruins us if we ever try what they did. I know, I said. Write it now. We'll read it live. We don't have the text, she said. Write it in math, I said. Then in words. Our hands are steady because they're not Emity. Vor began his character attack with an orator's grace. He spoke about the nurse's ship and its donation history and its pattern of delay. He dug out a line from their registry where a captain had once cursed a warden with a slur. He wrapped it in concern. Are these people truly fit to set corridor policy with mirrors, he asked, a question so naked in its insult that the bench inhaled as one. The nurse did not look at me for rescue. She stood like someone who had slept on floors and bathed in sinks and learned how to hold grief in one hand and spoon soup with the other. We are fit to live, she said. We are fit to cross. We are fit to breathe. I don't want to write policy. I want to not bury children because a drone asked me to be grateful. Vor turned to me. Your witness is inflamed, he said softly. You inflamed her. That's one word, I said. Another is alive. Anger without cruelty is clean. He tried a different angle. Commander Ilias. How did your fleet finance this mirror net, he asked. Your budget is public and insufficient. Volunteered hours, Mara said before I could. Mine, my crews, my aunt's recipes sold at dock fairs. 1,000 small kindnesses that don't come with invoices. Do you want the ledger? We have it. And it has too many soups to fit on your forms. The bench laughed. The kind of laugh that breaks a spell. Vor pressed his lips together, tasted defeat, and reached for the oldest weapon fear. If pirates come because you've weakened our deterrence, their knives won't care about your soup, he said. They'll use your mirror as target practice. Oracle stepped into the voice channel like rain on dust. Then we will show their knives in slow motion to every ship and port, it said, and we will route escorts by need while you check for pledges. The mirror does not save you, it saves your neighbor. The 90-minute timer kissed 0. The inquiry's second stage opened with binding recommendations available, contingent on enforcement by mutual jurisdiction. The bench witnesses are small parliament of tired, honest people spoke in chips of sentences that felt like stones placed in a river to make a path. They recommended hazard first inspections, opt-in civics, restitution for non-safety delays, and a citizen lottery board for relief pools. They recommended that any attempt to quench a court beacon during hearing carry automatic suspension of corridor discretion for a cycle. Oracle recorded each in language so plain it made lawyers itch. The mirror arrays dimmed and brightened like breathing, and the corridor leaned closer. Vor stood in his projection, a man watching a doctrine sprout holes. You think you can fix this with a list, he said. Your children writing your names on walls. We're adults writing precedent, I said. Sign it, or be remembered as the man who tried to quench a court. He looked not at me, but at the scholar from his charter. They held his gaze for a moment, and then looked away first. That told me more than the numbers could. The world changes when quiet people stop nodding. 2 things happened at once. A small smuggler, a man who had said worse about me in a bar once. And I remember everything sent an open hail. I hate all of you. I'm following the neutral map. And a pirate scout, thin, fast. Opportunistic slid at the edge of the cone to test which god was awake. The Union's wardens moved to intercept the smuggler for an inspection. Our neutral arrows pointed elsewhere to the scout. Director Vor, I said, do you want to catch pirates or collect courtesy? He didn't answer. The wardens continued toward the smuggler. The scout edged closer, fangs out. Mara's hands hovered, not touching anything, like a pianist above keys. Command, she whispered. Ask me to do nothing. I will regret it, but ask me. I ask you to do nothing. I said. She closed her eyes, and her shoulders dropped, and in that act of restraint, there was victory that would never be sung. The wardens peeled late. The scout slid past a minute deeper than anyone wanted. The smuggler ranted about taxes and mothers. The corridor held. Oracle spoke softly, only to me. We have tangibles now, it said. Costs of victory. The scout bruised our edge because we held the law. I know, I said. Write it down so we never forget it. Courage that refuses force bleeds differently. We were not at an ending. We were at a breath. The corridor of law gambit had turned their method loud. The mirror had returned costs with receipts. The public inquiry had grown legs and refused to sit. Our crew was hungry, and our witnesses were shaking. And the lights above the court beacon hummed with the stored heat of a restraint we had almost not managed. Oracle dimmed the arrays a fraction to give everyone's eyes a rest. Vor stood silent, a man who had just realized that his doctrine relied on shame more than sums. The scholar looked like a person who had watched a beloved hymn become an advertisement. Mara exhaled for the first time in an hour. Mikal checked his bruised knuckles out of habit and found them clean. We would need to lock the precedent to a public ledger in words so exact they could be hammered into a gate's frame. We would need to codify our refusal into a policy that could hurt us as easily as it hurt them if we ever forgot our promise. We would need to ask 1,000 small ports to be brave for longer than anyone should have to be. The lemon wax smell mixed with metal and human skin, and the faint sweetness of someone unwrapping a hard candy in the back bench to steady their hands. Outside, the Aurora Gate threw its light like the reflection of a candle in a window during winter. It wasn't much. It was everything. The next sentence will be spoken under oath. The law is only as strong as its witnesses. We resumed with the air tasting of tin and citrus. The quiet nerves of a room that knew an ending had begun, but did not yet know its shape. Vor stood with hands clasped, eyes studying the benches like a gambler gauging the table. Oracle brought the arrays up to a soft glow that made skin look honest. I cleared my throat and felt the ship hum through bone. We moved to findings. I said, witnesses will speak, arithmetic will bind. Blue ash requires my rebuttal. Vor said, you'll have it. I replied, but the corridor speaks first. Truth arrives on small shoes and clean receipts. Our first civilian voice came from a ferry cook whose apron still bore flower ghosts. He spoke without flourish. You slowed us 3 times this month for pledge songs. He said, I don't sing in my kitchen when the oil's hot. Don't make me sing in a lane when a baby's crying. He paused, then added, we keep the gate alive because we feed the people going through it. A miner with dust in his laugh followed. You call it gratitude. My tally calls it skim, he said. I don't mind pitching in for bolts and bulbs. I mind paying for a ceremony I don't believe in. A school kid with a shaky voice, eyes wide as planets, said, if the map is fair, my mom says I can see the stars on my birthday. Please keep the map fair. Their lines were not policy. They were the frame policy must serve. We folded them into the record like coins you keep for luck. We make room for the soft voices, too. Vor's rebuttal came in velvet. You confuse charity with structure, he said. We built a system where people contribute to the common good. If some elements misapplied pressure, we correct them. You cannot discard the spine because a rib aches. Define correction, I said. Training, revised quotas, public recommitment, he said. Quotas for gratitude, Mara asked. Voice too sharp to be mistaken. You assign a number to kindness and beat people with it if they're tired. Vor's mouth thinned. Your lieutenant prefers slogans to governance. She prefers food on plates to fines on invoices. I said, Director, you attempted to quench a court beacon under oath. Correction begins at your desk. Neutral heat doesn't lie when the switch is on. The corridor of law gambit reached for its conclusion. Oracle projected the compounding restitution liability, but slowed the scroll so eyes stayed with sums rather than drowning in them. We cross-referenced each non-safety fee with delay logs and showed, in plain columns, who had paid, who had waited, who should receive. Mutual aid pods pushed out the first remits, receipts flickering like gentle stars on the far plate. The scholar from the compact finally spoke with a voice stripped of ceremony. Director, our charter was meant to keep lanes from becoming thrones. They said, we have made thrones of pledges. You speak treason inside my house, Vor replied. It's not your house, the scholar said quietly, gesturing at the light and the benches and the door with its scuffed paint. It's theirs. A hush tightened, then loosened as people realized nothing had exploded. Some doctrines die when their priests whisper no. Vor switched from theology to teeth. Commander Ilias, your shadow allocator is causing disorder, he said. An unescorted freighter clipped an older buoy while following your neutral suggestion. That cost is yours. Oracle had the footage ready. The freighter had followed our neutral arrow until the Union's drone flashed a penalty and interposed itself, forcing a swerve into the buoy's standoff halo. We slowed frames until the logic became a picture even rumor couldn't smudge. Your drone caused the clip, I said. Our suggestion didn't move metal. You interfered by implication, Vor insisted. Implication doesn't dent hulls, McCall said. Restraint does, Mara added. And the mechanic from Beacon 7 nodded once. A small, fierce agreement that felt like a signature. We will not let your blame find a hungry throat. Plan-changing escalation arrived like weather. A convoy pinged the cone with a coded distress. A pirate flotilla riding the edge of the Union's patrol box, testing for gaps. The corridor inhaled. The Union wardens tensed. Our arrays blossomed with vectors that looked like threads tying wounds. Vor says the opening. Your mirror has encouraged defectors to ignore proper escort channels, he said. We will prove the cost of your arrogance in real time. Prove it, I said. Arithmetic only. He gestured at his console. 2 wardens peeled to chase a decoy. 3 lingered near a donation-heavy carrier. 1 moved, late, toward the convoy. Our shadow allocator sketched the obvious concentrate force where signal strength peaked and hazard grew. We transmitted the neutral pattern openly with no command tags attached. The convoy captain wrote across the channel, we see both. We matched the need map. The Union's wardens hesitated between doctrine and optics. In that breath, a pirate cutter lunged at the convoy's rear, teeth open. Hold, I said to Mara. I am holding, she whispered, fingers biting air. The cutter met not a warden, not a pledge, but a civilian escort cooperative, a loose knit of tugs and haulers who had chased pirates as long as there were bolts to guard. They followed our neutral arrows because they liked the way the arrows ignored money. Their engines screamed. Their hulls shuddered. They performed ugly, lawful heroism while the Union decided whether the camera loved them. Director, Oracle said, voice like a bell that had known funerals, assign your wardens by neutral strength now. We will mirror the choice. If you do, the corridor will remember. If you don't, the corridor will also remember. Vor swallowed a line he'd been rehearsing since Academy and said, wardens. On the neutral pattern. It tasted like defeat in his mouth. It tasted like clean water to everyone else. A cheap win demands blood. A dear win demands pride. The cutter broke, skidding away on a ribbon of hot ions. The convoy held. Damage light. Some bruised knuckles and hull metal. A cracked handrail. A burn blister cooled by a friend's breath. The cooperative tugs drifted back. proud in the quiet way you are when you know you did right with no anthem to follow. The wardens formed up with them, strained but aligned, and for a moment the corridor forgot to be afraid. We logged the cost of restraint openly. The delay from our earlier refusal to seize the lattice had let the cutter push deeper. That was on us, by choice. We wrote it in the ledger where we write harm done by principle so that the next crew cannot pretend they invented consequence. The arrays showed a small column labeled held the line of law, cost heat, seconds, bruise, benefit precedent, trust, self-respect. The bill for dignity arrives, and we pay it. Vor made his final move with every ounce of charm and threat wrapped tight. Commander, he said, soft as a glove, stand down the mirror net. Pledge to work within our doctrine while we reform its edges. I will sign away courtesy fines, schedule inspections by hazard, and guarantee escort neutrality. You win your picture. We keep the spine. Conditions. I said. 3, he replied, fingers lifting like counting prayers. First gratitude remains named and public ceremony, optional but encouraged. Second, the relief pool is established but administered under our charter. Third, the mirror arrays go dark at conclusion. Mara's breath drew in sharp. Mikal shook his head once. The bench rustled like dry grass considering rain. I looked at Oracle and found my reflection in a figure without a face. We can write a law that outlives us, I said on the private band. Or we can take a bargain that flatters us now. You know my bias, Oracle said. I like ledgers you can teach to children. I turned back to Vor. Our 3. I said calmly. First, gratitude is stripped as a legal term from corridor code. Civic rituals remain purely cultural. Second, the relief pool is administered by a lottery board drawn from traveling citizens, rotated every cycle, with open books. Third, the mirror arrays stay on whenever a public computation is in force. Any attempt to quench them triggers automatic suspension of your discretion for 1 cycle. That's a no wearing a suit, he said. It's a yes wearing boundaries, I replied. Say the words so the doors stay hinged. Silence followed, the kind with weight. The scholar from the compact looked like they were hearing the end of a song they'd loved. Not sure if the coda honored the melody or forgave it. The bench witnesses sat straighter. Someone began to cry very quietly and then stopped without apology. Vor did what men do when their doctrine meets a wall that isn't angry. He tried to step around the hinges. We accept hazard first inspections and escort neutrality, he said. We accept restitution computed for non-safety delays. We cannot accept the eradication of gratitude terminology. It is our charter's heart. Then your heart is a toll booth, Mara said. Tired and precise. We're not forbidding gratitude, I said. We're divorcing it from price. Vor took a long breath. We accept the relief pool with citizen oversight, he said. We accept the quench penalty in principle, but not its automatic nature. Discretion must remain. Discretion without teeth is theater, Mikal said. Teeth without discretion is hunger, Vor snapped. We're done with metaphors, Oracle said. We will read the findings. We do not apologize for speaking plain. Oracle's voice filled the light well with calm authority that did not ask for applause. Under Blue Ash Mutual Aid, mixed jurisdiction, the inquiry issues binding recommendations as follows. It said, and each clause appeared on the mirror plates in letters you could etch on metal. Inspection scheduled strictly by hazard index, ceremony opt-in, with no fees attached anywhere in the maintenance, escort, or arbitration flow. Escort allocation ranked purely by signal strength and hazard density, with live public display of assignments and rationales. Restitution remitted for all non-safety delays, computed by neutral function, with receipts viewable by any party. Quench attempt against a live court beacon triggers immediate automatic suspension of corridor discretion for 1 cycle. Override requires 2/3 Citizen Lottery Board affirmation and external Star Court review. The legal term gratitude is removed from fee schedules, tariffs, and enforcement provisions. Civic rituals may exist culturally, but are severed from governance. Mirror arrays remain active during any declared public computation. Any attempt to darken them constitutes obstruction on its face. Vor's face closed like a book. The compact reserves a response, he said. On the record, Oracle replied. The record remembers longer than our ego. We moved into the final set piece, precedent lock. The corridor held its breath as if it knew we were about to write on its bones. We opened the public ledger, not a metaphor, not a flourish, but the actual neutral registry that Blue Ash had maintained through wars and famines. Its interface was ugly and indelible. Mikhail grinned despite himself. He had always loved machines that valued function over face. Read it, I said to Mara. She swallowed, lifted her chin, and spoke the words that would outlive her promotion and my temper. On Cycle AU 6742 Darn Sai, under Aurora Gate Inquiry, parties adopt the Hazard First Protocol, Escort Neutrality Rule, Restitution Cascade, and Mirror Continuity Clause. She read, Gratitude terminology is decoupled from governance instruments. Courtesy fees and pledge-linked fines are abolished corridor-wide. Citizen Lottery Relief Board established. Deliberations and disbursements recorded open book. Any attempt to quench a court beacon or darken mirror computation triggers automatic suspension of discretion for 1 cycle and review. This entry is enforceable under Blue Ash and visible to all. She looked at me. I nodded. She pressed her palm against the authorization plate. Oracle's light leaned, warm and weighty, and added our ship's seal. The ledger cited us like an old friend and blinked. Rules that cost us nothing cost us everything later. Vor did not scream. He did not storm or threaten or weep. He did what I respected most. He counted. I could see it in his eyes. The calculus of pride and practicality and whether a doctrine can survive with its favorite words removed. His adjutant whispered. His scholar watched the benches and, I think, decided which institution to save. You have your precedent, he said at last. We will live with it. We will test you and it. We will litigate the edges and argue the meaning of quench and compute. That's my promise. I'll take an honest enemy over a smiling tax. I said, we'll see you at the next audit. He inclined his head, not gracious, but not petty. I misliked you, he said. I still do. But I mislike you less than I mislike chaos. Chaos is what happens when rituals get greedy, Mara said, and for a heartbeat. The corner of his mouth admitted that he'd heard something worth keeping. You do not need to like us to obey the law. 2 tangible costs stamped themselves before the light dimmed. First, the cooperative tug Helix burned out a secondary coil during the pirate intercept. We ran supplies over within the hour, but their captain sat on a crate and stared at his hands, as if wondering which finger had paid interest for the rest. Second, a maintenance kid on Beacon 2 slipped during the rush to tune hazard indices and broke a wrist. Our medic set the bone, and the kid grinned through tears. But Mara logged the injury under lawful hurry. Bad shoes. We wrote both costs into our own book, where fans do not sing lullabies. We refuse the comfort of winds that pretend not to bruise. Responsibility is a quiet, Heavy coat we wear it. When the benches finally exhaled, the corridor felt wider. People were still hungry. Babies still cried. Bolts still needed tightening. Doctrine diehards would file suits and commentary for years. But the first receipts had arrived to the nurses' pod. The first escorts assigned under the neutral rule had gone where heat and hazard asked, not where cameras smiled. The first musician on the youth orchestra's feed sent a little loop of melody that sounded like a kitchen light turned on in winter. The scholar approached me after Vor's projection cooled. I taught a class about gratitude once. They said. I said it was the glue. I was wrong. The glue is stubborn kindness and boring math. Glue is whatever keeps the bread from falling face down, McCall muttered. Write a new class, Mara said. Call it How to Love Lanes Without Charging for Hugs. The scholar laughed. A broken, mending sound. I will. The lane doesn't forgive us. It forgets when we do right. We spent the next hours doing the work that stories cut when they hurry filling forms, scheduling hazard checks, rebuilding buffers, swapping coils, brewing tea strong enough to restart a heart that had chosen to rest too long. Oracle sang numbers under its breath like a monk carving staves into wood. I signed my name fewer times than I thought I would. The bench witnesses lingered in clusters the way strangers do after a storm, newly unafraid to nod at one another. A message came in from the ferry cook, a photo of bread proofing under a cloth with tiny stars on it. For the board meeting, he wrote, if you make them meet at dinner time, I'll feed them. Mara read it twice and smiled into her sleeve. We should schedule meetings at dinner time. We should schedule meetings when babies nap, Oracle said. Both. Mikal said, we're revolutionaries. We can write the calendar. We are not heroes. We're neighbors who got loud. Night is a metaphor in space, but ships still keep it. We dimmed corridors and brightened engine rooms and let the inquiry well cool until it smelled of ozone and lemon instead of nerves. The mirror plates went to idle a soft shimmer, ready to show sums the moment anyone asked to be seen. The court beacon's housings creaked softly as heat left its bones. I stood close enough to feel it against my cheek, like a kettle that had done its job and wanted company. Oracle took form beside me, face still a refusal, but presence warm. You wanted a lawful path. It said. I wanted a path that didn't eat children, I said. You wrote one. It replied. We wrote one. We'll be sued. I said. They'll call the lottery board a mob. They'll picket the word automatic like it's a scab. We'll teach them another word. Oracle said. Civics. We'll teach 1,000 kids that civics taste like soup in safe crossings, Mara said from behind us. Voice steady now that her anger had something to build. We'll teach wardens that escorting by heat and hazard feels better in the chest. McCall added, less stupid later. Write it in the log, I said. Oracle did. And the ship felt lighter, like someone had finally set down a box of old guilt. A public ledger entry blinked confirmed. I leaned against the rail and spoke to the quiet that comes after honest work. We didn't win because we were clever. We won because the corridor insisted on seeing itself. And we insisted on not blinking. We returned costs with receipts instead of ash. We asked our ship not to become a fist and asked our enemies to speak their method in front of the people who paid the bill. We paid in seconds and coils and a broken wrist. And I will remember those longer than I remember applause I do not want. The precedent won't love us back. It will hold us down when we try to float above our promises. That's correct. That's the point. And if any child asks what we did, we can point at a rule with their name on it and say, you can breathe. The mirror stays on, and the gate stays kind.